In my view, what we are dealing right now is with the failure of a whole civilization. So it's not about the crisis of economics or politics or energy or education. It's the whole civilization. It's dealing with a big crisis which has been growing and getting worse and worse in many aspects for a long time. And now we're getting into a point which this crisis cannot go ahead anymore. It's literally unsustainable. We knew that this society, this civilization was unsustainable from at least 60 years ago. We know it, but we were able to sustain this unsustainability. We were able to go ahead without paying the consequences very directly. But now this cannot be done anymore. We are entering into the age of the consequences. It's like when if you go to a party and you are someone who likes to drink and you get drunk, and maybe you have fun while you are drunk, but then on the morning you pay the consequences, you will have a hangover. The consequences are later, no? Yeah. So now we are entering the age of the consequences. To really understand nature and to really empathize with Gaia as a living system, we really need to create a new spiritual framework, a new spiritual approach, a new worldview that shows the interconnection of all living beings, that we are not really separated from each other, we are completely interdependent, interconnected, and that helps to feel the reality that we are living in this planet that is a self-regulating system, that it's intelligent, that it's alive, that it's even conscious, if you like, and connecting spiritually with this reality that can be proven even from a scientific point of view can help people have much more fascination for nature, respect for Gaia, and awareness of our belonging. First, acknowledge it, accept it, fully welcome each one of these emotions, and then we are able to let them go. And when the more we let them go, the more we realize that we are not these emotions. This is a basic tenet, basic principle of this approach, is to understand that we are not our emotions, or we are not our thoughts, or our beliefs. We are the essence, the observer, the person who is experiencing these emotions. To project the reality that we want to manifest, but without desiring it. The desire is the expectation aspect. So you can just allow yourself to create a certain reality. But in the moment you start to desire it, you start to go into a terrain in which you lose power and freedom. And that's what the Stoics talked about. They began their books basically, and many times it was an idea that was coming over and over again in their books, that it was like be based on what depends on you, on what you can control, which basically it's your actions, your reactions, and your representation. So how do you think things are? How do you react to things? And how do you act in general? What's your will? So you can have high expectations for yourself on that. I think that's the important point. To have high expectations for yourself on that. And we could say very low expectations for the outer world, which lower expectations for the outer world doesn't mean that you don't project what you want from the outer world. You can have a clear image of the amazing world, the amazing outer reality that you want to manifest and create. But let go any desire for it. Let go any expectation for it.
So and that makes sense. When you visualize that helps it come into reality. But when you desire is an implication that you don't have it right now. If it's something you desire, exactly, and you focus on desiring, yeah, you're implying I don't have. So
exactly. I think it's not the mind is not to blame. We don't have to stop thinking. Actually, we have to think better. We have to think more. The problem is that we are not using the mind right. And part of the problem is that sometimes we mistake ourselves, we confuse ourselves, and we think that we are just the mind.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Common Underground Podcast. I'm your host, Jasper Rodenhuis. And today I'm joined by my co-host, Tjeerd de Wit, and my guest, Blai Dalmau Solé. He will be my host in coming weeks. He does multiple things, working with personal positivity, personal power, and Tjeerd, help me with the third one.
Planetary preservation.
Popular power.
No, is it popular power or is it planetary conservation?
It's personal positivity.
Yeah.
So popular power and planetary preservation. It's a nice way to put it with all the P's. You see, P, and to put a simple framework for understanding what I call integral progress.
Ah, okay. So yeah, there's like three ways that you can get engaged in this conversation. Then with three subjects that are all tied in together. I understand, right? And so how does this process work if you're engaging in this what you're involved in personal power? Like one I could imagine is more personal, and others are more focused on the community. So could you give a brief explanation on what these three aspects are all about?
Mm-hmm. So the first one, which we can call personal positivity. Of course, there's many ways to call it. I just chose to call it this way. It's about basically the relationship we have with our own being as a person, as an individual. So basically, it's all about our self-development in all the basic aspects of it, like the emotional, spiritual, mental, and physical. The second element, we could call it, is the connection from the individual to the society. So it's what we can call the political dimension, understanding this word political in its more common, in its more original meaning, which was about taking part in the society decisions directly and deciding about the direction of society and being engaged with the social and political structures. So this is another dimension of integral progress, which we can call popular power. And then there's another dimension which is related with the ecological dimension of human existence, and we can call it planetary preservation as the more urgent, really needed thing to do in this aspect right now in the 21st century, is to heal our connection with nature and to manage to get into a really sustainable state.
So you're looking into like how people can become more sustainable and live harmoniously alongside each other and with nature. So that includes physical materials, I could imagine, but also like some mental aspects. Does it also include like this when we have the emotional and the physical and the mental, it's also a form of integration? Does this include that?
Right. It's all about integrating what I'm working on, what my worldview is very based on, and we can integrate these aspects of the individual, we can say, the emotional, the spiritual, physical, and mental, in a whole holistic and global personal development approach. And then we can also integrate the individual development into a more holistic approach, more integral, which takes into account the society and the planet, which is what I am doing. I think this basic framework of what I call integral progress, that is based on these three pillars: the planetary preservation, the popular power, and personal positivity, helps to synthesize in a very simple way, in a very easy to understand way, the whole picture of what we need to evolve and what we need to improve radically.
Can I ask what type of activities do you engage in for this process? Because I was doing a little bit of research, and I found out that you have a lot of creative talent that people mention, and you are engaged in art. And I was wondering if this is a part of your approach.
Yeah, I tend to be very integral also in this aspect, in that I am attracted to many languages, we could say, and I have been naturally diving into different ways of communicating, and I've done some short movies, I've done many articles, I've done some music. So this is my different, but this is very particular from me. Like everyone can choose to choose one language or to choose 5 or 10. Of course, this is completely particular to the individual, and it's irrespective of having an integral approach. I mean, one individual can have a very integral framework and very integral approach to life and to personal development and to civilization, to society, but at the same time be very specialized in just one language or just one way to approach it. This is more individually based.
So yeah, go ahead, too.
Oh, are you? Would you say that you are more of a generalist? Or is there a specialty of yours when it comes to expressing yourself?
If I didn't understand the last part of the question.
So I guess what I'm trying to ask is there's a lot of different ways to express yourself. And you just mentioned a few beautiful examples when it comes to making music or art or writing articles or even doing film. And so in all these ways of expressing yourself, you have tried so many things. Like, do you have one way that you like better than other ways?
Yeah, I think writing is my base. It's something that has been always there since I was 17 years old or something like that, and I feel like it's very much my most important way to contribute.
That's nice. It's your passion, you would say.
Yeah, yeah.
So what are some ways in which you integrate? Is this like a continuing process? Like for my own philosophy, I really believe that we really, like in our society, we think we find truth. So we're at a certain point and then we found it. But I actually learned that finding the truth is an impossible task, and it's more about the search itself. So encountering many different things and integrated this into your own being and really trying to understand it and enjoying the process. I think this is what integration is about. It's a continuing process instead of like, okay, now I'm there and now I know everything and I don't have to learn anymore. I think it's more about just having that state. I always have this saying, it's also written on my chest, like love learning about life, which involves the three aspects of love, emotion, learning, knowledge, and living, the action. So what are some new things that you are brought into your integrative philosophy that you weren't aware of before?
I think there's a whole movement of society worldwide towards a more integrative way of living and a more integral worldview. And one of its basic traits of this evolution is the integration of apparent polarities. So during history, there has been many apparent polarities, and many times these polarities have created some kind of separation, division, or even conflict. What we can achieve during the 21st century, I think it's the overcoming of these polarities and getting more into a way of thinking that is always able to find a way to integrate these apparent polarities. For example, there has been a polarity. For example, during many time, there has been a polarity between people who were more into politics, like changing society, and people who were more into changing oneself, into therapy, spirituality, personal development. Because these are two very basic aspects of human existence, the collective and the personal and the individual. Now, more and more people is fully understanding that we really need to integrate these two, that we cannot forget any of these parts, and that there's no reason to create a conflict between these apparent polarities. In the integration and in the synergy, there is the strength.
That makes sense, because you're describing the difference between putting your attention and your focus outward versus putting it inwards, which is kind of creating this separation or the duality, polarity that is making people only associate with their insides, but not per se with the society that they live in, forgetting that maybe you're all part of a larger organism.
Exactly. it's important both to take into account the inner dimension of existence and the outer, and the collective and the individual, which are not exactly the same. I mean, this is a very known. What I'm explaining right now, it's a very important contribution of a philosopher called Ken Wilber. He created this framework, which has 4 quadrants, and in one part we have the individual, and in the other part we have the collective, the social, we could say. And in one part we have the inner on the horizontal, and on the other horizontal we have the outer. This way we have 4 different areas. One is the inner and individual. The other one is the inner and the collective. So inner individual, inner collective. The other one is the outer individual and the outer collective. In this way, so for example, the inner individual, it's about psychology and spirituality, this kind of approaches and sciences that deal with the inner world of the individual. The inner collective, it's about culture, which is the inner aspect of a society, the culture, because it's all about the beliefs and this kind of inner aspects, not the beliefs, the language, the traditions, the spirituality shared by a whole society. And then there is the outer individual. The outer individual is what happens to us as individual, what we do in terms of a physical body. We are not just, of course, we don't have just an inner dimension like our feelings and our thoughts. We also have an outer dimension, which is our biology, our chemicals, our movements, our physical movements. All of this is the outer dimension of the individual. And then there is the outer dimension of society, which is about technology, economy, all of these approaches that deal with the society, but regarding the outer physical aspects, not like culture, that was the inner ones, but the physical aspects like technology, economy, etc.
That makes sense, yeah, because that's a great framework to look at the world through if you then take a step back and observe the whole thing as one big happening.
Right. It helps quite a lot to take into account all the different spheres in life, because sometimes some schools of thought or some proposals or tendencies have been very based just in 1 or 2 of these quadrants, and sometimes they have forgotten the existence of the other quadrants. So it's important that even if we are based, for some reason we are very based in our approach in 1 or 2 quadrants, that we always remember that these other quadrants exist, and we try to understand reality from these other perspectives, not excluding this perspective, not having what has been called absolutism, quadrant absolutism, but remembering always the whole picture, that the cosmos we live in has at least these very basic 4 dimensions.
It's a way to break duality when you describe it like this, by introducing extra viewpoints.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's something that I find bothering about the New Age movement, which we talked on in a previous episode, where the ego and the mind, it's all discarded, but that has this purpose, because otherwise it wouldn't be here. I think it's a matter of integrating that in the right way as well. And exactly. Relationship is a key word there, like knowing where the source is and what the relationship from the ego to the source we can still use the ego and it can be very useful. But if we identify with it, yeah, then it becomes a problem. But doesn't mean that it doesn't share any value. I have this body, for example, it's a part of my ego, but without a body, I wouldn't be here, you know? So, yeah, like I can definitely feel in what you're saying. And I think like that's why I really feel drawn to this work, is that I think about many things, and then it occurs to me that that also needs to be integrated. Like in our previous talk that we did offline, we talked about a little bit about education, which is for me one of my backgrounds, which is also a form of integration, because children, they already have that mindset of wanting to understand the world, but when we get older, we get pushed upon us a lot of ideas and a lot of assumptions, and we are not really taught to question those assumptions. So what like, I know that you have a lot of practical solutions that are really concrete, and that people can further go into, like permaculture, or like education, or we talked a little bit about economy. What are some concrete steps that you take towards creating a positive change? Because it's nice to have all these models and this way of understanding the world, but if we don't live according to our understanding, then the words are just words, and there's nothing coming out of it. So what concrete steps do you take?
Could you please focus more the question, because the concretes can be on personal positivity. For example, there is some concrete tools and approaches there. There's some concrete approaches and strategies to make popular power a reality.
No, then I mean more which one? Because on society, like more that, especially like the last part where was the, forget the name again, but the planetary conservation, that were that's like if you create change into society, I think that will happen in there. Like all these other two aspects, that's how I understand it, are focused more on the personal basis. But we can think about like something that I've learned here, like people have good intentions from the start, they want to make a difference, and they think about solutions, they create all types of things, but then eventually it won't make the effect that they're looking for, because don't really concretize their steps in the right way, and that may include something that you said in our previous talk about participation. So I can accept that I don't know anything, or I don't know everything, but I can include someone else, and then we know a little bit more, and the more people join, the more of our qualities we share. And this is a concrete step where we can make effective change, because we're maybe not creating some building or whatever, but at least we're coming together and sharing what we've learned, and that already carries a value. So yeah, maybe do you need to be more precise, or can you answer it from here?
Well, if you want, we can deal first with the whole picture, and this means that the need for change is really urgent, and we need to reinvent and rethink our whole way of living. Because the people in power know this, and they have some plans to reinvent and reset the whole civilization. But the plans they have, the kind of civilization that they want to create, is probably not in our best interest. It's probably not the more healthy and positive civilization we can imagine at all. It's basically on the other way. It's a war civilization in many aspects. It's a reinvention of the whole civilization we are living right now, but it's increasing many negative aspects of the present system, like the the concentration of power, for example, the dictatorship, oligarchic dynamics. They want to increase this. The technocratic dependency, like the fact that our lives are very dependent on a global economy and on a technocratic network that is hugely unsustainable, hugely damaging for the environment and even for our health. All of this, they have the plan to increase it much more. So, because they know that the civilization as it is working right now cannot keep on working in the way it's working right now. It cannot go ahead much more. So they are trying to do a kind of integral revolution, but a negative integral revolution, in my view, a very negative integral revolution. And what I'm trying to promote, it's a positive integral revolution. So a whole change of civilization, because we need it, but a change that is really positive for all life in the planet, for all living forms in the planet.
Would you say that that this change that you're describing, that is being orchestrated by social engineers, that this is an effort to create a version of humanity that becomes more dependent upon government institutions, government assistance, government money, going away from people becoming more self-sustainable, more community-based, more exchanging things with each other, and basically creating a permaculture society?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Right now, in the amazing historical moment we are living, there is these two very important tendencies, because as I was saying, society as it was working cannot keep on working much more time. So there is these two very important tendencies for a renewal. One is based on decentralization, local communities, local economies, permaculture principles, spiritual development, personal positivity, connection with nature. All of these are very important values of a wave that has been growing for some decades and now is getting more mature and is getting more massive in some aspects. More people are involved. But on the other hand, there is also a growing plan which is completely the opposite. Is more centralization, more dependency on the individual towards oligarchic governmental structures, more dependency from global economy and technocratic networks.
Would you be talking about like Google and Facebook, the Mark Zuckerberg, Jack Dorsey's, Apple? Is that what you mean with technocracy?
Exactly.
Their influence in government and that influence growing is basically causing this centralization of government that has more and more influence in our lives every year.
Yeah, they know that the way of life we were developing cannot go ahead for energy problems, because there is important energy problems in the system. The system has a tendency to grow, more consumption, more production all the time. This has been going on for 2 centuries, more or less, depending on the place a bit more, depending on the place a bit less. But we have been around 2 centuries growing and growing and growing, exploiting more the planet, more consumption, more production, more transportation around the world, globalization. And this cannot go ahead like that. So they need to keep on their system, to keep on the centralization of power. They need to reset. Actually, they are talking about the Great Reset. There is a book called COVID-19 The Great Reset, written by the president of the Economical Forum, World Economical Forum. And basically they want to reset society, creating a more huge difference between the masses who will be more, which actually is already happening. In the recent years, we have been going through a fast process of disempowerment of the masses and impoverishment of the masses. And then on the other hand, really few people worldwide are having more and more power in economical and political terms. So for example, the richest billionaires in the world, Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and some couple more, they have increased quite a lot their economical power, their fortunes during this last year of the COVID crisis, while most of the people has been drastically impoverished. So that's what their project is all about. It's huge concentration of power, abolition of the middle class, and the masses. A lot of the huge majority of the world, like the 99% of the world, much more impoverished and disempowered of what it is now. And then an elite, a technocratic elite, worldwide, a worldwide government controlling basically many aspects of our life. So as you can see, there is this complete opposition between these two projects. We can call both of them are an integral revolution, because both of them are a profound change in our way of life, but one and the other are going into complete opposite directions.
So that makes sense.
How do you go into more of the, because I think we'll all agree here that we don't want a world where the power is more centralized. I think we're more wanting to bring the power back to ourselves. So what are some steps that anyone watching this or we should take or could take to really improve ourselves and bring the power back? What are some physical steps? What are some mental steps? Or some emotional stuff? What would you say to someone that really wants to change and don't want to go towards this future that you're describing, where everything is more centralized?
Right. The first thing I would say, and that's why I put this framework as my basic approach, is don't forget any of these three very basic aspects of human existence that we need to deal with in order to create a new civilization that is viable. So we need to deal at the same time in a synergetic way with our relationship with nature, with our relationship with ourselves, and with our relationship with society. So, because otherwise it won't work. There has been some historical attempts to, for example, focus just on the political aspect. There has been many political movements that were a lot about revolution in the social structures and direct democracy and so on. But they forgot a bit about the importance of working on our inner and individual world. So this was an important aspect of their failure. Or they were some people working on the permaculture, we could say, on the healing the relationship with nature. But if you are lacking also the political aspect, it has important limitations. This permaculture movement cannot grow unless it is organized in a political sphere, in a communitarian sphere. So we have to deal with the synergy between all of these aspects. And naturally, all of the concrete proposals we can implement to go ahead in a transition towards a new society. Naturally, all of these concrete steps have synergy between the ecological, the personal, and the political aspect. So, for example, when you promote permaculture into a village, let's say, into a village or a town, naturally you will create more community. You can create, at least, you have the opportunity to create community based on permaculture projects.
Yeah.
This community can be the seeds for a popular assembly, which will empower the people in the political sphere, will give back the power that now it's concentrated on the parliamentary institutions, which are oligarchic institutions, and will give it back to the people in the local sphere, where people can meet face to face and can deliberate, can reflect on different proposals about which steps to take as a community or as a society, and can then decide in the local assembly about what to do, how to implement it, and so on. Also about justice, about laws, about taxes, if you want, about business. They can decide all the basic things that now governments in a bigger scale, in a national or international scale, are deciding. They can take the power back and decide it in the local communities, in their assemblies. And this is very synergetic with creating a permaculture movement in this village. Because when you create a permaculture movement, you will empower the people to be more self-reliant, more independent, and to have a more local economy. And this will empower the people of this village to be more independent from the governments, from the oligarchic institutions, from the impositions of international negative institutions. So it's synergetic. But these two elements, important elements, to create, for example, a massive permacultural movement locally, and a political institutions and a political transition which empowers the community, cannot work unless they are synergetic also with the third important element, which is to create a culture and to create concrete educational spaces and practice spaces, meeting spaces, reflective spaces, which give the individuals the tools to deal with their problems in the individual level, to deal it in an intelligent way, to find a way to improve their capacity of self-knowledge, self-organization, self-determination, and self-improvement. So it's very important that the individuals have the tools for all of this self-improvement, organization, determination, knowledge, even self-care, if you want. And this is a very important aspect, for it's also synergetic with all the other ones, with the permacultural, we could say the ecological aspect, and the political aspect. And if we take into account all of these aspects in a global view, and we create movements and we create personal strategies that deal with all of these aspects, we can really be successful in improving radically, drastically the world and ourselves.
So you're calling for organizing and unifying communities, and I would ask, what is a good place to start? Say, for example, I'm in the Netherlands right now, but I live in a beach community on Jamaica. There's a lot of really great souls around, and say I find myself in the opportunity to get a few people in the room. What are the first things that you can start to discuss if you want to move towards this way of living?
Yeah, that's a very important question, which can have some general answers, but also it has a lot to do with every specific situation and every specific individual. So there is this synthesis between the general answers, but also the very specific situations and individuals. No?
Oh yes, of course I understand that, because the aspects that you mentioned, they point towards personal advancement and personal development, and also ecological preservation. So say the beach community, for example, could organize to host a beach cleanup, and that way, like, check the box of planetary preservation, have efforts to collect plastic recyclables, and those kinds of things are already happening in my community because it's very eco-based. But when it comes to helping other people start on the journey of personal development or personal power, I believe you call it. Like, tell me, how does that look?
Popular power.
Okay. Yes. Can you describe
popular
that middle
power.
step?
Yeah, I think the key is to try to solve things that will really empower in this holistical way the people. So there's many things to do actually, because there's millions of things to do, and they are all very needed. But we need to think strategically also which of these things that are needed will give more fruits first, that will give us more opportunities to keep on developing this movement. So it's very specific to each individual, to their calling, also to their purpose. But to have this framework in mind, that we need to deal with these three elements, and if you find something that can deal with the three at the same time, go for it. If you find an initiative that can empower politically the people and can create a better relationship with nature, creating a permacultural dynamic, which will empower economically the people also, because in permaculture, you are not just protecting nature, you are producing something that will be economically good for your household. No? And you are at the same time developing the basic positivities of human beings in a conscious way. You are increasing the virtues of the people, the moral virtues, the spiritual positivities. This is perfect. If it has these three elements in a very synergetic way and a very powerful way, in a way that opens possibilities to keep on advancing in this transition, then this is perfect.
Thank you. That makes sense. And of course, every group of people, every location requires a very specific approach. So it makes total sense for you to say that. And I like your explanation of this.
Yeah. So if we look at the more of the ecological aspect, what does it really require for people to study within nature to widen their perspective about how nature functions? Because one thing that I've learned is working, not myself with bees, but my friends in France, they worked with bees, and they stressed the importance of the bees because they could repair the atmosphere, which is so much broken. We have a huge problem with that. It's not really discussed anymore, but it's some of the things that I think a community should also look into, working with that, not just working with plants, but also like educating themselves, like how nature as a whole functions. And that's Victor Schauberger, his work complements this, like try to imitate it. So is there do you have any some education for people to really look into, you know, how can we heal nature? Because I would think that in every, like in Jamaica, it's different than in Spain, for example, with the plants and how they work. So there's differences there, but there's also similarities in every plant and every and like how it functions with each other. So does any of your work focus on this? Because you mentioned the ecology.
Yeah, during some time I was a bit more focused on this aspect, which I think it's the connection between what we can call planetary preservation with personal positivity, because to really understand nature and to really empathize with Gaia as a living system, we really need to create a new spiritual framework, a new spiritual approach, a new worldview that shows the interconnection of all living beings, that we are not really separated from each other, we are completely interdependent, interconnected, and that helps to feel the reality that we are living in this planet that is a self-regulating system, that it's intelligent, that it's alive, that it's even conscious, if you like, and connecting spiritually with this reality that can be proven even from a scientific point of view can help people have much more fascination for nature, respect for Gaia, and awareness of our belonging to the planet. So that's where the element of permaculture, ecology, links a lot with the element of personal development, spirituality, psychology.
Okay. Well, let's take a 10-minute break and then come back. We can discuss in the break what we're going to talk about in the next part, or maybe you have a certain suggestion. So yeah, we can continue for our conversation, but we'll see how things will go. And I'll see you guys in a bit.
Great.
Okay.
Sin, dwelling hollow, chainsaw spin, has its purpose within. Power struggle, Lord forgive. Podium poetry, bureaucracy wins. Controlled, fetal fuck, televised, tormented, governmental, twisted sister, chainsaw spin. Senate, Grand Dragon, Republican win. Seduction and sin, fucked once again. Oiled and greased, Texas chainsaw. Bombed and bewildered, innocence, hair singed, unfiltered. No reception, televised redemption. Killed to survive frustration, chainsaw spin. Concealed and ready to kill. Hidden forces centered in the slaughter field.
Let the chainsaw spin.
Guns get struck with a razor point pen. Pendulum precise, liver hits the throat. Drips adrenaline and taking sips of what's filling. Fell into the kill zone. Serpent slither and wrap around your silicone. Continue to cut and lacerate. Vocal tones consist of moans and screams. The cannibals fiend and feast, making hate to the demon beast. Loving every piece of flesh stripped from rotisserie flip. Bodies charred. Let the chainsaw spin. After being beaten by the ones they feed your scraps to. Perhaps you will escape, but not before it's too late. Make a break for it with broken legs, slip past the gate into the forest. You're dreaming, I let the torture commence. Forget about your training and the lessons of your sensei. It's an air raid, high power voltage is applied. Vultures keep an eye open when eating your raw meat. Nibbling, gnawing on your cheekbone. You've been hanging there for weeks, telling the last secret that you'll ever keep. As you die alone, no dial tone, disconnect you flesh from bone. Pouring acetone down your gurgling mouth. Run for home, but the crow is knowing where you live. Camera show no evidence. Fresh blood, no razor. Coming to claim their vengeance. Sentences said backwards, enable the dead to rise. For the record, let the chainsaw spin. Mass obliteration, annihilation, no salvation. Life taking, creations losing patience. Ancient agents of Satan awaken and ain't waiting for no revelation. Sedation and deprivation, agitating invasions, desperation, migration to false praise and lazy eye grazing, gradually fading for the duration. Grave situation, your manifestation in relation to humanely become mistaken. Let the chainsaw spin from limb to ligament, syndicates to infinite imminent doom. Maggots crawling and wallowing in pain. Let the chainsaw spin.
Welcome back, everyone. Welcome to the second part. In this part, we're going to talk about the more of the personal aspect of working upon ourselves and what these things could include. We talked about more of the political and ecological aspect in the previous part. So some things that include personal growth, I would say, is being able to contemplate and really taking things in. So, for example, if we remember something, like we remember someone's name, we can create a network of ideas associated with this person, and through that we can like extend our exposure and really deepen our awareness and our relationship with that person. So every person carries a unique quality, and every person has like I'm thinking of the Solkin, the Mayan calendar. Everyone has their own signature on there and their own destiny. And if we really like use these tools in the right way, we can deepen our lessons. But it's not like I'm pushing on anyone like you should follow the Solkin too. But it's been a very big beneficial transformative tool for me to really synchronize myself with time and really step into the moment and seeing the uniqueness of every day and every person. So for the Mayans, the kin is called a human is a kin, like and the day of the year is called a kin. So they share the same quality. Well, what else? Do you use certain systems for your growth? This is then like a time system, like where it works on cycles, and it works. I do believe that our ego is programmed on two levels, as far as I know. One being time, and the other being language. So most of my philosophy research were focused on these two aspects, especially on language and symbology, how our mental, our subconscious communicates us through dreams, through symbolism, through stories. If we really can get the right lessons from these stories, from this symbolism, it can be really like a guiding tool, just like being able to read the star signs while you're sailing on a ship. You can really navigate. What are some things that you include in your personal development? Because Tjeerd mentioned meditation in the break. What are some things that you're pulled by?
Well, the process I've been developing for myself in these last 6 years, and that now I'm starting to share it with others. It has been a lot about researching, experiencing, learning about all of these different tools for personal development, and trying to figure out which of them can be more fitting for different purposes and different people in different situations, and how to integrate them in a synergetic way also. So I think this is a process that many people is now also undertaking, because basically internet is making that much more easier. These tools have been around for a lot of time. Some of them have been around for thousands of years. Some of them have been around for hundreds. Some of them have been around for decades. But it was not until recently that we had this amazing communication tool, which is the internet, that can help us to find very good quality explanations, teachers, courses about many different tools, and this way try them out by ourselves and figure out how they fit with each other and how they evolve different different aspects of our being. So that's what I'm trying to do, to find in the emotional, spiritual, physical, and mental aspects, which methods, approaches, tools can, I feel that can help more people, that are more easy to practice, easy to understand, are more basic, are more universal, and give them more results in less time. So we could say that are more efficient. And how to integrate them in a coherent framework of personal integral development, in which the individual can do his or her own way of including more of these tools, trying them out and sticking to them, creating the necessary habits to fulfill this personal development will.
In your experience, what are some of the best tools people can use for self-development, like you're describing it?
Right. So if we go into the emotional dimension, one of the best tools I have found is what is called the letting go technique, which is also has been also explained in a more methodic way by the Sedona method. So both of these approaches were developed in Sedona, which is a city in the USA, by Lester Levinson, was the founder of the Sedona method, and then there's another guy called Richard Dawkins, that is the founder of the letting go technique. And both of these methods are very similar, basically, and they help a lot to deal with what has been called the shadow of our personality, which is all the repressed emotions, all the unrecognized emotions that we experience without awareness, and that as we don't want or we don't know how to deal with them, usually we put them like in the underground of our psyche. We put them there, And then there is like a garage. The more the years pass by, there is like a garage that is in a full chaos. There is a lot of emotions that we are all the time trying to emerge because it's full, and we need to spend a lot of energy putting emotions there and keeping them there, repressed and unrecognized. So what the letting go technique and the Sedona method helps to do is it gives you a basic procedure to go to the garage, open the door, and start to deal with whatever appears the first, whatever emotion appears the first, which sometimes can be emotions that we have coming from something very recent, like in this week, but many times they are linked with some things coming from a lot of time ago, even our childhood, events that we don't remember, but have been stored there at some point in our life, have been stored as repressed emotions. So usually, as we don't have the tools and we don't have the knowledge that we can deal with these emotions, we are unaware of them and we are afraid. Many times we are afraid of them. So we keep them and we spend a lot of energy keeping them repressed, and there is this chaos always going on wanting to emerge. And this can create a lot of negative dynamics in our personality, or can create a lot of lackings or a lot of shortage of energy, shortage of joy, because we have all of this there. So we have to deal with that and to first acknowledge it, accept it, fully welcome each one of these emotions, and then we are able to let them go. And when the more we let them go, the more we realize that we are not these emotions. This is a basic tenet, basic principle of this approach, is to understand that we are not our emotions, or we are not our thoughts or our beliefs. We are the essence, the observer, the person who is experiencing these emotions, who is observing them, who is deciding about them, sometimes who is holding them and repressing them. We are the person who is in control, but we are not these emotions. And if we understand this, we can let them go. And once we let them go and we experience it, we trust much more this process, so we can deal with more difficult emotions that were there. And the more we do this process, the more we empower ourselves, because we know that we can deal with whatever emotion. And our emotional level keeps on growing, because we spend a lot of energy repressing certain emotions, and then we spend a lot of energy in the lower scale of the emotional energy level. So the more we don't have to spend energy in the lower scales, in the lower stages, like energy we spend holding apathy or sadness or rage or pride. These are emotions that have different energetic levels, but they are all, we can say, negative emotions. They are on the lower parts of the scale. So the more we deal with our underground and we let them go, the more naturally, without having to do much more, our emotional level keeps on evolving towards courage, towards peace, love, acceptance, this kind of much more positive states of being.
It reminds me of like the spiral going up and going down, where these different emotions are attached to it. I can like add it into the video, but it reminds me of what you're describing. It reminds me of that. So it really speaks to me what you're saying, because it's something I've been dealing like personally. I think everyone does certain level dealing with this with emotions, and then they feel like, ah, man. Like for example, in the West, we're taught not to really express our emotions, especially in social environment. And today was actually the first time in a very long time that I did that, and I have my own personal reasons for doing that. But it was a big step for me to really make myself so vulnerable, being able to cry for other people. But I think that's something that we really. And that's why it speaks to me what you're saying with emotionally evolving, is that still, like, of course you still feel sad, but you're using the sadness in another way to really connect with other people in a more vulnerable state, and by that you can get a sense of what love is. Because I think like these emotions we feel, fear and love, and is the ultimate split. But the rest, they all stem off from either of these roots. But at the same time, they reflect the other as well. So if I'm like afraid of losing someone, that shows that I care about this person, because I am afraid of that they're losing, that they will be out of my life. But at the same time, I have to let them go, and then I get into step into acceptance. So what I'm saying is that in each side, there's, just like in the yin yang system symbol, there's one little dot, and I think that dot also represents like a seed. So even if you have a trauma or whatever, it carries the seed of the opposite side, where it can switch the whole situation. I think that's also what you're doing, to go back to the first part where we talked about political integration. Is also the polar side, and like then you described that there had like two possible ends. One was being more egalitarian or more centralized, the other one being more free-minded, but they all like carry the seed of each other. Maybe, I don't know, kind of losing track of what I was saying, but I guess you get
right. Yeah, no, you're going into this pathway of trying to integrate polarities and seeing the connections, which is very, very important. And in this aspect, regarding emotions, we have been in this polarity also. Usually, in the last decades, there has been, first there was the negation of emotions. During many time, as you were saying, like emotions were not an issue. It was like you just have to repress them, you have to forget them. It like people were not openly talking and being aware of them, just take them out from the picture. It was the basic approach in many philosophers during history have had this approach. And then in the last decades, we have gone into another extreme, especially in some therapeutic or personal development environments, that is to kind of glorify emotions, to believe that emotions, we have to kind of pay a lot of attention to them, believe them fully. They have messages coming from the divine. We have to always respect whatever emotion someone has, and the emotion is the most important. And this approach is the other extreme of the polarity. I think neither of these two extremes is right. Emotions, we have to acknowledge them, we have to welcome and respect them, but we don't have to blindly believe them. We have to understand that we are not them, that we can decide about them. We can decide to hold them or to let them go. And many times they lie to us. Many times they tell something that, if we choose to believe, it can be wrong for ourselves and for the people around us. So
we tend to think in worst case scenarios, don't we?
Sorry?
I think when we, to address what you said, we tend to think in matters of the worst case scenario and have emotional responses to things that might happen in the future.
Right. Yeah, sometimes thinking in the worst case scenario, I think it's not bad. There has been a lot of emphasis in some personal development approaches to always think positively, to always visualize what you want to manifest, which is right, of course, but it's just a part of the picture. We always have to try to have the integral, the whole picture. And visualizing what you don't want, the worst case scenario, it's also very healthy in many aspects, especially if you let go of the emotions related with that scenario. So you imagine something that you don't want, and you let yourself experience whatever emotion emerges from there. For example, sadness or fear or anger can emerge if you visualize intensely, realistically, some situation that you really don't want at all. But then you can deal with these emotions that emerge, this sadness, this fear, this rage. And when you deal with them, you let go of resistance towards that potential scenario. And this is very, very healthy, actually, because when we have resistances towards certain outcomes, we can tend to produce these outcomes more because we are afraid of them. We are resisting them. We have a desire of, no, I don't want this. I want to avoid this. And this resistance, I don't want this, I am fearful of that, all of this can actually empower the chances of this scenario to become a reality. So it's good to do what the Stoics, the ancient philosophers that were called the Stoics, they had a name for this that was basically reflect about the worst case of scenario. They recommend they recommended that,
or meditation upon that.
Exactly. They recommended that as a spiritual emotional exercise, which I think it's good advice.
Yeah, definitely, and it shows practicality as well. But something that is left out in Stoic philosophy is more of their way of seeing the world. So the Romans who later adapted Stoicism, they focused really on the practical side. But I think the cosmology that the Stoics presented should also be included into our own worldview. But I do think that's it's a great example of what you presented with Stoicism. Yeah.
Right. Stoicism had a worldview that in some aspects was quite positive, but it can be much more improved with all the spiritual and scientific evolutions that we have gone through in the recent centuries and decades.
Yeah, it does show, like there's some studies with the people that had PTSD, that if they go to war and they're totally naive, that they are much more inclined to be traumatized because they have this expectation that they're fighting for their democracy and it's all glory. But then the reality kicks in and it's a lot harsher than they imagine, and that's how then they come back totally traumatized because your mind is not prepared for that. Like the Romans, and we had like the gladiators where they like slaughtered each other, and no one there got traumatized that came from the tournament, because everyone knew where they were coming from, or where they were coming for. So they weren't like, oh, it's totally shocked, oh, there's someone dying here, you know. I think that is something that if we don't expect things to happen, and they do, then we're much more inclined to be traumatized. And I do think, like, of course, expectations are not something that can totally be avoided. We need certain expectations. If I give my philosophy lessons, the student have certain, we discussed it in a previous episode, they have certain expectations of what will happen. But this can lead to a blockage to their view as well, because they're looking for that certain thing, but then they'll miss out on all the other things that will fall out of their expectation. They're not looking for that. And I do think that we should be open-wide to whatever comes. And if we step into a certain situation with an expectation, then our views are limited.
There's two ways of looking at that, in my opinion, because I think we've all heard that the phrase that it's smart to keep your expectations low, because then you'll never be disappointed. But the other side way of looking at that would be that we kind of have to have some level of expectation that things are going to work out. We need to expect synchronicities to happen in order for us to even be aware of those things. If we don't expect things to happen, then we're actually blind to opportunities that pass by us in life as well.
Yeah, I think we have to project the reality that we want to manifest, but without desiring it. The desire is the expectation aspect. So you can just allow yourself to create a certain reality. But in the moment you start to desire it, you start to go into a terrain in which you lose power and freedom. And that's what the Stoics talked about. They began their books basically, and many times it was an idea that was coming over and over again in their books, that it was like, be based on what depends on you, on what you can control, which basically it's your actions, your reactions, and your representation. So how do you think things are? How do you react to things? And how do you act in general? What's your will? So you can have high expectations for yourself on that. I think that's the important point. To have high expectations for yourself on that. And we could say very low expectations for the outer world. Which lower expectations for the outer world doesn't mean that you don't project what you want from the outer world. You can have a clear image of the amazing world, the amazing outer reality that you want to manifest and create. But let go any desire for it. Let go any expectation for it.
So and that makes sense. When you visualize, that helps it come into reality. But when you desire is an implication that you don't have it right now. If it's something you desire, exactly, and you focus on desiring, yeah, you're implying I don't have. So
exactly. Yeah, when you say to your own psyche and to the universe, I don't have that, you tend to create that reality. Because you are desiring that, you don't have that, things are not like this. So you basically are saying to the universe and your own psyche, things are not like this. This is the message. But if you don't desire, if you just allow yourself to experience that reality without this letting go any desire that emerges, because it's natural that some desire emerges, but you can keep on letting it go, And then you just experience that reality that you want to create, And this gives you much more chances to be very effective in creating that reality. And if this reality doesn't happen, you will do your best. You will not get traumatized, as Jasper was saying. You will do your really best in every situation that appears.
To go back to and this speaks to personal development as well, but something that includes personal development is also meditation. I'd like to get your thoughts on something I've been thinking about, and I get very frustrated because my own background in Krishnamurti, he spoke about meditation as being the state in between words. So a lot of people have this conception that you have to sit in a lotus position, and you're just sitting for maybe 20 minutes or whatever it might be in that position, and then you walk on in your life, but then you're thinking that you're not meditating anymore. So for me, I've always looked like, okay, these experiences can still be very valuable, sitting in this lotus position, having a transcendental mind, whatever that means. But I do think that those experiences should not be integrated into your normal way of living. Instead of saying, okay, now I'm meditating and now I'm just walking to wherever I want to go. But that you bridge these two seemingly different states of consciousness and bringing it together, like that they're both meditation, and you could say like all is meditation, because I can even make an argument that once if I'm really in a philosophic state, I'm really deeply contemplative, I would see that as a form of meditation, because for me it isn't stressful. It's just becoming familiar with what I want to learn about through my mind, and that's for me as a form of meditation. But a lot of people have this association with their mind once they're thinking that they're not meditating anymore, but that's depending if the thoughts are stressful or not, because meditation is all about relaxation and just being from this relaxed mind or relaxed state, you're much more open to learn, and you don't jump to conclusions very quickly. Like here with the people here, they're very creative. I'm in a creative community center, so they jump very quickly to conclusions because people have association, emotional biases with certain words, so it triggers experiences that I have relating with this word. So something that Krishnamurti stressed important to was to look at, what do you mean with this word? What do you mean with the word meditation? We might just perceive the word meditation completely different, and then we'll have a big discussion on what the best meditation is, but what do we actually mean with this? So what's the underlying commonality?
Right. I think the commonality is basically our awareness of our own source, of our own essence, of our own core being. I think that's the key to understand meditation in any technique. It's basically and that's why you can do an exercise of meditation, which is right. You can practice it for 20 minutes, and you can have a meditative state during the whole day, like the mindfulness practices advocate to keep this meditative state during all actions that you do, which is actually the aim of any meditation practice. When you practice during 20 minutes, 1 hour a day, what you are trying is to intensely get in touch with this essence of what you are, to then, during the whole day, be more connected to this essence, be more aware of this source that you are. And in this regard, there is an interesting metaphor that helps a bit to understand all of these aspects of the different aspects of our being, the emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual aspect, which is the metaphor of I don't know how it's called, the horse car, you know, there is the horse, the car, which the horse is bringing, the carriage, I think it's, I don't know the name in English, carriage or something like that. And then there is the person who gives the orders to the horse, so the person who is driving the whole thing. And then there is the Lord, who is...
You mean a chariot, I think.
Sorry?
A chariot.
A carriage that has a driver and
a carriage, yeah. Right. There is a carriage with a horse, the driver, the own carriage, and the Lord. And we could say that our emotions are like the horse. So our emotions are very important to go ahead. They give us the energy, but they need instructions from the mind. They need to be guided somehow, accompanied somehow, because otherwise the horse starts to get more rebel and to do crazy stuff, you know. So there needs to be a good driver who understands the horse, who sees the horse, and who gives good instructions, guidance to the horse. And this driver is the mind. The mind is very important. It's extremely decisive, extremely powerful. That's why I don't resonate with some spiritual approaches that try to kind of stop the mind completely from functioning and kind of blame the mind for many negative aspects of human civilization. I think it's not the mind is not to blame. We don't have to stop thinking. Actually, we have to think better. We have to think more. The problem is that we are not using the mind right. And part of the problem is that sometimes we mistake ourselves, we confuse ourselves, and we think that we are just the mind, or just the mind and the horse, or just the mind and the horse and the carriage, because the carriage is the physical aspect, is our body that brings everything together, and that the driver takes care also of the carriage. But we have to understand that basically we are the Lord. We are the whole thing, but we are also the Lord, basically. The Lord is our spirit, is our essence, our source, is who we really are. And we don't have to confuse it with the mind or with the emotions. It's important that we remember that we are the Lord, that we are different from the mind. The mind receives our instructions. When everything functions well, the mind receives our instructions and gives instructions to the horse. So meditation is a lot about basically remembering that we are the Lord, basically listening to which direction we want to go, listening to this intuition, to this wisdom that comes from our spiritual core. And then this wisdom can be implemented through certain actions to take a certain direction. And the way to implement it is through the mind, and the mind will give instruction also to the carriage and to the horse. And when everything is well connected, every part knows what its function is, and there is a good communication, then we can have an amazing personal development.
That sounds incredible. What is your preferred technique? Since you already mentioned that there are so many different types of meditation. for you is this not about quieting the mind, as I understand from you. It's not part of your practice to try and quiet or put away your thoughts, but to make them better. Do you focus on certain thoughts while you meditate?
I have done different styles, and I have dived more maybe in other practices. Meditation, I have not dived a lot into it. I have dived more into other spiritual, mental, physical practices, but meditation, I'm very interested. It's just that I'm gonna dive into it soon. I have not dived into it fully. What it resonates a lot with me, it's like a very natural approach to meditation, which is basically to connect with this essence that we are. So observe whatever emotion and whatever thought comes to you, and sometimes focus on your breath, sometimes focus on the third eye. It can be very useful, and just accept fully the moment, and do not try to do anything. Do not try to calm your thoughts or anything. Just observe. Just that, for me, it's very useful. But I know there is a lot of nuances and a lot of techniques and a lot of levels in meditation. So I feel like I have a lot to learn, a lot to experience still in this aspect.
I think if you're meditating on words, that's called prayer. Like just like focusing so intensely on a certain word or certain thought that you try to like bring it into your life in a certain way. I think that's what prayer is about.
Yeah. Exactly.
But what are some things that we missed in like the personal development which you speak of before we end things up? Do you miss important points?
Well, we have talked a little bit. We have talked a bit about the emotional aspect with the letting go technique and the different scales, the different emotional energy levels. We have talked a bit about what we can call the spiritual aspect, so connecting with this essence, with this core, with this Lord that brings the whole carriage. And we can talk a bit about the physical and the mental, of course. About the physical aspect, I think paying attention to the very basic processes of our body, which are to nurture and to clean. These are the very basic processes of each one of our cells. And being aware of these two processes and self-managing them in a conscious way, it's an important aspect of physical development. So for this, I have tried different diets and different healing, detoxification methods. And the one that resonates more with me, because it takes into account both the nutrition aspect and the cleaning aspect, and it takes into account not in a very fixed way, dogmatic, still always the same principles, but more it gives you a dynamic way, a transitional path. It's called the mucusless healing system, or it can be called also the vitalist diet. And basically, this approach gives you some principles that can help you to really understand how your body functions, and to eat in a way that helps you to be more and more free of the toxins that have been accumulated in your body during your life, and therefore be more independent of any kind of industrial, unhealthy, addictive food. Be more free from all of these foods that we have told that we need and that we have get accustomed to eat, and have much more higher level of health and vitality.
Are you talking, when you mention a mucus-free diet, Blai, do you mean no cheese, no milk, no dairy products like yogurt that produce mucus in your system? Is that what you mean?
Right. The mucusless healing system, it's a transitional system, which means that for each individual, there is the potential for a transition, a progressive desintoxication and healing of your body, in which the things that you eat at the beginning of this transition can be very different from the things that you eat 2 years later, or 5 years later, or 10 years later. So at the beginning of this transition, it is recommended to eat some cheese, especially if the person likes the cheese and doesn't have any problem with cheese or with yogurts. It is recommended to eat it at the beginning. But then, the more the person cleans his or her body, the less the person needs this kind of mucus-producing foods, and the more it can give up these mucus-producing foods, like not just cheese, not just dairy, but also cereals, potatoes, eggs. All of these are mucus-producing foods. So I still eat many of these foods. I still eat eggs, potatoes, sometimes some cereals. But if I keep on doing this system, and I keep on doing some fastings and some other techniques to help my body get cleaner and cleaner, I will naturally feel that my body doesn't accept this food so well anymore. For example, many years ago I used to eat rice, whole rice or white rice, but at some point in this transition, I started to notice that my body didn't react well to rice anymore. My body didn't want rice anymore because rice is quite mucus producing. So I gave up rice. And this can keep on happening naturally with eggs, with dairy, with other things. You don't have to force so much your body to do that, because you do a transition that naturally at some point your body just say to you, that's enough, please don't give me more of that. And this is healthy. Actually, at the end of this transition, you would just need fruit, basically. You would just need to eat fruit with some nuts or some green leaves, but basically fruit is the most original, natural food for human beings. And if you do very seriously this transition for some years, you can reach the state in which you just need fruit and you have a lot of energy and a lot of vitality.
So once you reach that state of extreme health, and you're a fruitarian, say, at the end of this transition, theoretically you would have changed your body enough to even become like the breatharians, somebody that does not even require any food to eat anymore, but can live off of prana, life energy, and people that end up eating less and less, but never reducing in their activity level or their health.
I met someone that actually followed the Brattintian way of life for a while, and he, when I met him, he only took like a pint of fruit vegetables, like a mashed, like a juice, and he lived off this for the whole day. So I know that's like that people do it, and it's very it can be very effective.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it will be fitting for everyone though.
If it would be what?
Very fitting. Like it would be wise to prescribe it for everyone, like a universal answer. Like if you have diabetes, for example.
Right. No, I think the core, the essence of a positive approach in this aspect is what is right for everyone is to know how our body works, to know the principles, and then everyone has the power to self-manage their own eating habits and their own health states and issues in a conscious way. And then you can decide. For example, I have decided not to go ahead too much into this transition very fast. I feel well with what I'm eating now. I still eat some eggs, some potatoes, some bread sometimes. And I like this way of eating, even if it's not the most healthy. But for some reasons, including practical reasons, social reasons, I feel right to be here, to stay in this state of transition. But I know the principles that work on my body, and I know that I can go ahead if I need it. I can go into a more fruitarian diet. I know how to do it. And that's the important thing, the knowledge. As in many aspects with personal development, all comes down to empower the people to have the knowledge. And then everyone can choose at every moment of their life what to do. And that's very different from one individual to the other, what to prioritize, which pathways to take. That can be very different. But we have to make this knowledge available, because otherwise we are ignorant in many aspects.
Yeah. Oh, and we keep each other ignorant if we don't share the information. I remember that I used to think of a bag of nacho chips as a real dinner until I met my wife. My wife is a doctor, and she kind of opened up the world a little bit to me, especially when it comes to food. And since I met her somewhat years ago now, I have actually become a vegetarian completely. And I also avoid a lot of animal products such as eggs. I still consume cheese and milk, especially because it's also added to so many products in the grocery store without us even realizing. But so I have also taken a bunch of steps in a transition towards a not more and more healthy way of living and eating. And it's nice to know that there's some type of awakening going on where people are all moving towards healthier lifestyle choices, especially with our current world situation.
Yeah, and I think there are steps in the importance of like-mindedness, because or you're living by yourself, but we should support each other and promote to each other that we should live more healthy. Because if you're in a community where people eat chips, then you're inclined to eat chips as well. Like you can still set up barriers where you still follow your own diet. But in food consumption, we're very socialized. We eat together with each other, and we share a lot of food. So it's not always very easy to follow certain diets, but it's never impossible. And we should definitely take it very seriously. I've known this from my own journey. Do you have some closing words, Blai? Something you want to say that we left out? Something you want to stretch importance to, or what you're doing right now, or just in general? Something you want to say? Can be anything.
Well, I would just like to thank you both for this opportunity to talk in your program, in your podcast.
Thank you.
I think it's great that you are dealing with all of these issues, and it's part of this movement, of this growing movement that we were talking about, that give us hope. This movement of more awareness, more health, more positive practices and exchanges. And I would just like to encourage everyone to focus on all of this and to take it very seriously, because this is the real challenge of our century, to stop focusing so much on the economy and the technology and the outer world and the materialistic world, and to improve our inner world, ourselves as persons, ourselves as communities. So I would really like to encourage us all to focus, prioritize, and get serious on all of this.
Focusing on your call to action for everybody to organize. If people want to contact you, Blai, what would be the best way to reach you online?
Usually they have my webpage if they want to check a bit of what I'm doing, which is Blai Dalmau, my name basically, Blai Dalmau Solé, without the accent, without this accent, .net. This is my webpage, and my mail is hola, so like hello in Spanish, hola. How is this sign in English? Arroba.
At.
Oh yeah, at. Yeah.
At. And then my webpage. In my webpage, there is different. There is some articles. There is some short movies. There is some courses announced. I'm gonna start doing some online courses during this new year about personal integral development, with all going much deeper in all of the tools we have talked a bit here, and many more tools. So if someone is interested, they can check it out there in my webpage or ask me directly.
Okay, yeah, I'll put in the links in the description so people can check out your work and support what you're doing. To the viewers, if people want to get in contact with us or want to engage in conversations, we do have a Discord channel. I've previously mentioned it in previous episodes, so people can join if they want to, and we can talk about these things, because I really want to bring all of you guys, everyone. It's not just us three having a conversation, but it's an ongoing conversation that includes everyone, not just people on this platform. So yeah, be sure to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and thank you, Blai, for being here, and Cheered as well. And yeah, have a nice evening, and goodbye, peoples. Bless you all.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you.